What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. It's the Monday Smash with Ira Schoffel and myself, Aslan Hajivandi. Thanks for being here. Hit the thumbs up if you got a second, which you do, because we'll be here for about an hour. It's lower right corner of the screen, I think. Just hit that thumbs up. Says you like the video, pings it out there to the world so they know there's a show that's totally dedicated to talking about nothing but FSU. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Set your notifications with the bell so you'll know when shows like this happen. Jeff Cameron Show, 1 to 3 o'clock, weekdays. Seminole Headlines tomorrow, 1 to 3 o'clock. Ira, Jeff, and Corey talking about the Noles. We got Warchant and then all sorts of other stuff in between. Recruiting chat, 6 p.m. Wednesday. We're getting you guys ready. We're getting really serious out there. Warchant.com is the ultimate Seminole sports source. It's only $29.99 to subscribe from this moment when you sign up all the way up until September 1st. Corey and I were talking about the podcast, Ira. Like, people were asking how did we first, discover Warchant and how it all came about. And we're like, yeah, man, we paid like $99.95 or something to sign up and get a taste of Warchant. People can do it now for only $29.99. It's amazing.
Back in the day, right? And yeah, Corey, both you guys were authentic, original subscribers before you joined the party. I was not. The first time I got on Warchant was when I was an employee of the Osceola, but it's been cool, man. So I haven't had the experience of you guys, but that makes you guys more relatable. That's why Wake Up Warchant is such a smash hit.
Yeah, show for the people. Any quick thoughts before we get to talking about Florida State about what might happen tonight with UConn and San Diego State in the men's national championship game, Ira?
I mean, I tweeted during the FAU San Diego State game that I thought whoever won that game was going to get the TCU treatment. And I figured it was going to be UConn, but either way, I mean, UConn's dominant, dude. I don't know how they lost. They had that stretch in the middle of the season. Weren't they like 16-0 to start the year or something? And then they had that stretch where they kind of lost their way. And then, man, they are just ridiculous. That Miami team's good, man. And it wasn't Miami. They cut to 7 or 8, maybe something, but they never really threatened them. UConn's good. That big kid, man.
Sudogo.
Dude, he's a beast. He is a beast. They're good. They're fun, man. They're fun. So yeah, I don't. I hope it's a good game, but I would not be surprised if UConn ran them out of the gym.
Yeah, I think 7.5 is the line right now. So do with that as you will, everybody. Let's talk about Florida State football, Ira. We are in the meat of the sandwich that is spring football. I think it'll be practice 10 when we're out there tomorrow, something like that. Next Saturday, the 15th, will be the Garnet and Gold Spring Showcase. But as we kind of head into the dog days of spring, if you will, Ira, on the whole, man, we've seen so many good things with this program, with this team this spring. We've heard good things after this past scrimmage. Your best players are improving. That makes things fun, I think is what Mike Norvell said. Feel like we're just, we got our head in the clouds, man. We feel really good about this. I'm the cynical guy, so let me bring us down to earth a little bit, man. Are there certain things you're wanting to see, reading between the lines, maybe hearing what the coaches said the other day after the scrimmage, you think that needs to improve here in these last 5-6 practices before they break camp to get them really where they want to go momentum-wise into the offseason?
Yeah, I think, I was just thinking about when you were saying that, it's been very positive. And I mean, that's how spring football always is. I mean, unless you have some really bad luck, for the most part, spring practice is always a good time. And, and I think we're often accused when the team's not very good of writing positive things in the spring. But what are you supposed to do? I mean, they're not playing another team that's better than them. So the reports are almost always going to be positive in the spring. The difference right now is you have a team that is brought back, 90 to 95% of its production on both sides of the ball. And you brought in some really impressive transfers and a few talented freshmen. So yeah, man, it's bound to be super positive. But yeah, I think there's some concerns, or things that, I think you won't feel great about right now unless something changes between now and the season. I think if the development, if there's not a major change in what we see in the development of this team in the next week and a half before the spring game, we're not going to see them again really until August. So in that time, I think it's fair to question whether or not the linebackers and safeties are what they need to be. And that's probably the question we kind of came in to the spring with. And I think that's probably where we still are. I mean, offensively, there's hard to have a lot of questions. I mean, I guess if anything happened to Maurice Smith, you wouldn't feel great about the center position, although Darius Washington can slide in there and can play it effectively. I don't know if he'd be as good, but he can play it effectively. Casey Roddick, I think I think a lot of people assume, just like we did when they brought in the guy from Wisconsin last year, Caden Lyles, that he was just going to come in and take over at center because everybody feels like they can do better than Maurice Smith. But Casey Roddick he's never played center before, so now he's got 4 or 5 more months to get ready for it. But you wouldn't feel good right now about Casey Roddick at center. So not because he can't block, but just that's a lot going on mentally. Alex Atkins talked about it after the scrimmage. There's a lot going on mentally, not just snapping the ball, but there's a lot of the line checks and all those things, plus actually blocking that 320-pound dude standing over top of you. So those are some things I think that, but I feel like maybe we're nitpicking a little bit because there's a lot of great things about this team.
I feel like when I don't know, is having concerns about linebackers that nitpicking? I'm a guy that I just, I maybe haphazardly undervalue what linebacking cores mean to successful defenses, but I like what this front four is going to be. I'm a little bit more concerned about the back end than I am the linebackers at this point. So maybe that's why I'm not too in tune with what I'm seeing with the linebackers. But is it something that you've been hearing in between the lines from what the coaches have said, Ira, or is it what we've witnessed at practice that doesn't have you concerned? But, obviously you want to see everybody get a little bit closer to their ceiling. Maybe linebackers are the furthest from it, on the side of the defense.
No, I wouldn't say it's like a big concern, but you'd like to see more tackles for loss, more, just flash plays, I think. But they're fine, but it's not like you're seeing a ton of flash plays. Mike Norvell said Tatum Bethune was limited or held out at the scrimmage on Saturday. So I think that, he's a senior. He's a fifth-year senior. Kalen DeLoach is a fifth-year senior. So maybe they don't have to see a ton of those guys, and maybe they're not asking them to do a ton. But, you'd just like to – I don't know. How often do we walk away from 11 on 11 and are we talking about, man, did you see those plays by the linebackers? I don't feel like that happens a lot. So maybe that's what I'm talking about, is just seeing more plays out of them. But it's funny. You made that point about linebackers kind of being diminished. I thought Adam Fuller's conversation about that was pretty insightful. Basically, he kind of said that, in not so many words, that linebackers kind of becoming almost like the fullback of the defense. People are, you're not putting a lot of guys at linebacker anymore. You so many spread offenses, and you probably only play 2 at a time. Sometimes you only play 1 at a time, and he was saying how that affects special teams, because a lot of times those are guys that are great special teams players. So again, I'm not sounding the alarm about it, but I'd like to see some more big plays by those guys. And it could be just a product of, the way they're calling the defense too. I don't know.
Yeah. What about the back end? We spoke to Coach Fuller after the scrimmage, as we did with all the coaches and coordinators. And, at this point, I thought it was a little bit illuminating in terms of where he's at with his safety play. I was trying to kind of frame it as, you've got an experienced guy in Akeem, you got an emerging guy like Shaheem, and they're both really confident guys, and we see them out there in the middle of things a lot. But how was that position kind of coming along? And the fact that he was like, yeah, man, we need to see more production, and we need to see it now. I think that was about as strong of comments you'd get from a coach at this point in a spring. Just how much is that maybe number one on not the concern list, but the thing that we need to really maybe dial in on here as we're at practice on Tuesday and Thursday to see if there's some strides made, some maybe turnovers, takeaways created from the safeties.
Yeah, it was a really insightful response to your insightful question. And Corey actually is writing a column about it that'll be up on the website at warchant.com either tonight or in the morning. But he actually wrote a column off of that and just kind of what it means and where they're at with the safety position. And, and I think, I was talking, Jeff brought it up today on the Jeff Cameron show, and I was talking to him briefly. And I think the more I've thought about it since he said that, I kind of feel like it might give some insight into what this defense is going to be this year compared to last year. Last year I thought they were pretty conservative on the back end last year. They blitzed a good bit, but they were the safeties played deep a lot. They did not want to get beat over the top, and they didn't get beat over the top a whole lot. And so I wonder if this year, because they're going to be so much more effective up front. I mean, last year, not only did you not have the same personnel you have now, but some of those guys were banged up. Robert Cooper could not rush the passer. He had a bad shoulder the whole season. Fabian Lovett only played 6-7 games and was never really 100%. So you weren't getting much of a push up the middle. That's why they had to blitz a lot to bring pressure. And so now I think they feel like maybe, hey, there's going to be opportunities to make plays. You can't just play deep and keep everything in front of you. You need to go make plays. And so I think it's that. I don't think those guys have played poorly, but I think the message he delivered through us when he answered your question, putting it out there to the media, I think is probably something he's been harping on at practice too. And that's going to be something to watch. I mean, I think it's going to be something for us to watch these next couple of weeks as they wrap up spring, because there haven't been a ton of big plays from the safeties. I mean, I don't know if Akeem Dent, I don't know. I'm sure he's had an interception here or there, but not a ton. And same for Shaheem and, Duke Cooper. And I mean, I think it's a decent group. It's a solid group, but they haven't made a lot of big plays.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like when they go in team tempo, it's been pretty even. It feels like, I think last time we were at practice, that first team offense moved down the field pretty effectively. I don't know how much of that falls on the safeties. I do know that, like on Tuesday, when I think most of us thought that maybe, Jordan wasn't at his best, but he bounced back. Thursday looked amazing. And then on Saturday in the scrimmage, apparently it was so great that they didn't need to see more out of him. They were like, all right, one drive, you're fine. Like one ball went right to Akeem and he dropped it. And I hate to like call out one single play in a 2.5 hour practice, but I guess maybe that's a silver lining, because it seems like, we're not seeing missed tackles, or I don't feel like we're seeing a lot of blown coverages and big monster plays back to back to back at these practices. So maybe it is something as nuanced as like, hey man, like let's start taking the ball away instead of, pushing the guy out the boundary and letting it go incomplete. Maybe there's the need, the hunger to get more out of that position and, get more, not necessarily we're not getting, we're getting poor play. So that's hopefully the case.
Yeah. And, you like, I know Jeff has harped on this, and I think probably everybody on the staff is to some degree that, that Florida State's defense has not been good in zone coverage for a long time. I mean, it's really been a long time, but that you've seen Florida State be real productive in as a zone defense. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. If that's what he's getting at is, if you're facing the quarterback and you see him where he's going with the ball, you guys are really good athletes. You can break on the ball and either break it up or make a catch. And I think they're doing a really good job of coming up, making the hit, sometimes separating the ball. I thought there was a good clip. I don't know if you saw it today. You might have seen it. One of the NFL analysts tweeted a video of Anthony Richardson at Florida, like from the Florida State game. Did you see that?
No.
He pointed out that a lot of people have been killing AR-15, whatever he goes by now, for his completion percentage against Florida State, which was, I think he completed like 30-something% of his passes. And he went back and brought up a bunch of the incompletions, and he kind of presented them as a lot of these are drops or the receiver needs to make a play. But if you watch them, the credit really should have gone to Florida State's DBs. Jamie Robinson broke up some of them. Renardo Green broke up some of them. I mean, the DBs were Shaheem. They may not have got their hand on the ball before it got to the receiver, but they definitely were there on contact. So they did a really good job of that. But again, the next step is actually completing the interception.
Here we go. Ted Wynn.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah.
Got to probably be a little bit careful on how much of this we show, but I'll pull it up. It's fine.
And they're not. His point is they're not like bad throws, and that's true. But he was kind of like saying, if you're an NFL receiver is going to make this play, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, but a lot of these plays were broken up by DBs.
Yeah. Let me pop up this question from our guy Octavio as we kind of have that in the background rolling here. It says, could the lack of safety work be more about Jordan? We all saw the Johnny Wilson catch.
See, it's a contested. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But he'll show it from this angle too. And the DB's all over him, and he gets his hand in there. And that's how kind of most of the Jarian Jones. So a lot of the plays were like that.
Respect Jarian, Ted. Respect.
It wasn't like guys were wide open and just dropping the ball. I mean, all the ones he shows here are pretty much contested catches. That one, the receiver got knocked down on the route.
Well, to Octavio's question here about could the safeties be more about Jordan, that's worth maybe discussing because, listen, we're going to see the corners. I mean, the video he's talking about was Renardo in coverage on Johnny, and that's what can you do? That coverage was amazing in that clip that they released from the scrimmage. But I do wonder how much of the stress that this offense puts on you falls on to the safeties and maybe to a lesser degree the linebackers, because, I mean, not to give away trade secrets or anything, people, but you should really see the multiplicity. I mean, you will see it. What they run in practice, Ira, is it infuriates me almost on behalf of Adam Fuller and the defense. It's so difficult to defend, man. They'll run inside power, and then the next play they'll roll, Jordan out, so you'll sell out for the run. Well, then he'll run out to the perimeter. Guys open up. I mean, it's easy 6-yard completion every single play. Well, at that point, you start cheating up a little bit more to keep Jordan hemmed up. Well, then he goes over the top of you. They are just so incredibly difficult to defend. I wonder how much that ultimately falls on the safeties because, we're following the ball, most of us. Not that Coach Fuller is, but, in terms of what we've been seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is, even if guys are covered pretty well, and we're just talking about those, Florida quarterback who couldn't make those throws into tight windows or couldn't complete them. I mean, a lot of times, Jordan is completing passes when guys are covered. I mean, like there's not like that clip you're talking about with Johnny Wilson. Renardo Green is on him from the first step to the last step. But man, it's a great throw, great catch. Good luck. I mean, it was a 30-yard completion. And a lot of those we see in practice, again, defensively, it's not like they're playing vanilla. They'll bring pressure, from different positions, and sometimes protection breaks down, and Jordan's so quick getting rid of the ball, and then he can fit the ball into a tight window. So, yeah, it's a tough ask, man. I do think that's fair to say. I don't know how many defenses would just be producing a bunch of turnovers against Jordan Travis. Now, when the other quarterback's in there, it's a different story. They're not to the same level, but yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Well, when we bump into Coach Norvell after practice tomorrow, maybe we're checking in on the status of guys like Dimitri Emmanuel, Daryl Jackson. You think, when it comes to these hardship waivers? I mean, we see Daryl out there every single day. We saw Big Meech at Pro Day participating, so maybe it'd be fair to ask for some clarity, at least in that regard. Do we know anything about Daryl? Him being at practice every day, I assume, kind of portends good news for his availability.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still operating under the assumption that he's going to get his waiver because, they didn't do this new law about this new thing they just passed where they're going to really crack down on him until after, he was already in the process. So I feel like that you'd like to think he's fine because of that. Plus, even if the new rules were applied, I think he'd probably be in pretty good shape because I think he's got a documented case where his mother is really ill and she lives near here. And I think what they were doing in the last couple of years was just kind of basically anytime any player wanted to go into the portal, they were giving them the waiver. Everything I've heard is they don't have a decision on either one yet, I think. But again, with those things with the NCAA, you have no idea. It's not like they give you a status. It's like when you order a pizza and they're like, okay, it's in the oven and it's going to be on the counter in 6 minutes. And okay, now it's ready. And literally you just find out when you find out. And so I don't think that there's any definitive timeline. And we, I tweeted about it and I think we posted on the message boards with the Dimitri Emmanuel. He did participate in Pro Day kind of like as a, just in case kind of thing, like in case he doesn't get the waiver. Now, at least the NFL scouts have seen him and you got fired up watching Dimitri Emmanuel run through those drills. So I think that's a good sign for him if he does come back, right?
Yeah, I mean, to my amateur eye, I thought he moved the best out of some of the bigger guys that were out there running through those drills. So I was like, wow. I mean, apples to apples, like I thought he looked a little bit more fluid than Dylan did. But again, not a scout, everybody, just one man's observation about things.
You looked like a proud papa every time Big Meech ran through a route. You were giving him a little fist pump.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine like how big of, how much anxiety he has to be going through because, all right, like, these guys are in Arizona and they're in Atlanta and they're all at all these high-end Division I performance facilities that are focusing on nothing but broad jump, 40 times, all these sort of things. And then you're kind of, in limbo and you're like, all right, well, let me go out in front of all these 32 teams and important persons from all these programs, these franchises, and try to perform. Like, that's very unenviable. You wish the NCAA could give them some clarity. Feel that, NCAA, give them the waiver.
And it's cool again, it speaks to him and his relationship with Coach Atkins and his team that he wants to, because, and I don't know if do they still do supplemental drafts? Like, I don't know exactly how it would play out. If it goes past a certain point, but he could easily just walk away, and say, you know what, I'd love to be here, but if I don't know for sure, let me go ahead and start my life, because I think he's got a chance. He may be able to play in the NFL. He can play multiple positions. He's played guard and tackle, and he's also really smart, good team leader, good teammate. He's got some really nice mobility for his size. So I think it's cool that he wants to be here.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anything on whether or not there's a supplemental draft. There are compensatory picks that are added to the draft. So
they used to have the supplemental draft,
yeah,
but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I remember the kid from LSU, like he'd gotten in trouble, like La'el Collins ended up with the Cowboys. They picked him in the supplemental draft. I remember that, but that's the last guy I can remember. So anywho, moving along, our guy Thomas, who I don't know if he's banned on YouTube. He clearly isn't, but I think he might be in Chile, as they say on the Warchant.com message boards. But we'll throw a little music in the background. Matthew's at home, man. We'll let Matthew be a good man and take some time off. And he doesn't smell. Matthew
he's not the one that usually hands out punishments. So
yeah. Thomas does have a question about who we see starting in the slot, Ira, and punt return if Micah Pittman is not back by the LSU game. Man, they're cycling dudes.
There's a bunch of options, right?
Yeah, which I don't know how I feel about that particularly. I feel good about the slot receiver issue, if you want to call it that. Winston Wright. I think Winston Wright, Vandrevius Jacobs, and we keep
Ja'Kai Douglas.
Yeah, and I hate that I always say him last. I kind of need to say him first. He's been the most impressive out of all those three guys. So out of those three guys, slot receiver, I think you feel really good about. But meanwhile, last week wasn't a really great week for them in terms of fielding punts, at least in the early portions of practice. Now, when they break out 11-on-11 special teams, Ira, I'm not paying as much attention, but I don't remember hearing Papuchis or Norvell yell, which I imagine they would if they muff the punt during live stuff. But like in period 2, when they do individual stuff, man, it's like Azarie one day and Vandrevius, and then they'll mix in like Renardo Green back there, and then Ja'Kai. So there's a lot of guys. No one has like consistently cleanly fielded the ball or caught it, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on, because somebody said in the comments, hey, like, since when is just catching a punt all you want from your punt return with Micah? Like, wouldn't you rather have a guy muff 3 or 4 punts but take 2 to the house? I wouldn't.
No. You definitely. Yeah. I mean, like Mickey Andrews used to handle the punt returners back in the day. And while we could say that maybe some things in college football are not the same as they were during Mickey Andrews' heyday, he would always say, man, the first thing is, can you catch the football? And that is number one. And especially we just saw it 2 years ago. It's not like it's distant history. 2 years ago, they lost about a zillion yards in balls that just didn't get caught and rolled for 20 yards. So, no, I think it's a number one thing is catching the football. But I would say this, I felt like you'd like some more explosiveness than maybe Micah gave you. And I do wonder if maybe that hip injury is why he wasn't more explosive. So maybe if he comes back healthy, he gives you that. I think he's a starter when he's healthy, if he's healthy this season. But Vandrevius Jacobs, man, to being the guy, man, like he's I'm not saying he's perfect at returning punts right now, but he's a special football player. I mean, we've done the dance for 3 weeks about like he looks pretty good. I mean, I think he's big time, and I think he may end up being the guy. Some of those other guys just don't look real natural or comfortable, and they've been doing it longer. So my money right now might be on Vandrevius.
I like that. I think they even cycled in Winston Wright doing punts, because Winston Wright, at West Virginia, returned kicks. It's a different kind of skill set. I mean, the ball you're tracking a little bit differently. But yeah, I would think.
I did look back because I asked Norvell, and he said he thought he had history with it. He did return some punts in high school, so he has done it before. But yeah, I don't think he did it at West Virginia.
But no, I think that's a really good point in terms of we've seen Ja'Kai return kicks. We haven't seen return punts, but we kind of saw him return kicks in 21, and it wasn't great. So you feel like maybe in this case, the devil you do know isn't as good as the devil you don't. So if they can get reps of Vandrevius, like you said, I mean, he's got that kind of wiggle, that shift, that quick sudden burst. If he can just field it cleanly and be confident in that, he can stick his foot in the ground and probably cut up field and get some yardage. So we like that a lot. Bad Doom Guy says Pittman's absence is a blessing in disguise. He thinks that Jordan targets him to a fault, and Micah has made some questionable decisions on returns. Huge opportunity for this coaching staff and team.
Bad Doom is not a Pittman fan, huh?
Yeah, what's up with that? I don't know. I can't do anything off the top of my head that I was like, what are you doing, Micah?
I would say this. Somebody brought this up to me during the season, And I do feel like there was a period of time when they were not playing real well, particularly the NC State game, and in that stretch where it felt like Pittman was getting more targets than probably he needed to be getting. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at his targets, the first 6 or 7 games versus the last 6 games, his targets did go down. But he was super productive, and he was great on third down, and he came through when you needed him to. But they did Jordan, whether it was Jordan deciding or the coaches deciding, his targets did go down a little bit. But I don't think it was just. I certainly don't think it was a blessing in disguise, and I think he's by far their best punt returner. And I mean, he made some huge catches. I think I've heard you talking about him on Wake Up. Just the fact that he's able to catch those physical third down catches over the middle, those are a big deal. But are you pulling up his targets?
Yeah. I mean, after that Georgia Tech game, I mean, none against Miami, and then, he had 5 against Oklahoma. One of them was for a pretty important first down, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of the game there. But yeah, I mean, he got 2 games there where he didn't even get targeted at all. So yeah, that's a good eye, Ira. Yeah, this column.
But and the NC State game, he had 8 targets. I think he might have had more than anybody on the team. Look, man, there's a lot of reasons that go into it. Could be matchups, could be the way that the other team is kind of baiting you sometimes into throws. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but it does seem like in the second half of the season he got less targets than he did in the first half.
Our guy Daniel Gibbs wants to take a victory lap. I'll give you a soundtrack.
Is that true? Did Daniel tell you that?
Probably. I told you about Jacobs when he committed. Them Vero Beach boys don't play. Vero Beach guy, last Vero Beach guy we had won the title. Okay, fair. Fort Pierce wants to claim him a little bit too, Daniel. So you guys got to have an arm wrestling contest over who gets to claim Van Dravis. But no, man, I think if you go back and you watch maybe signing day stuff, like we had to pick our guy or whatever, either me and Langston or maybe Corey and I'm like, yeah, because he had Fort Pierce ties. I was born in Fort Pierce. I don't remember anything about him. I'm like, yeah, I'll go with him, because it really did. The cool thing about Mike Norvell, not only does he give us all his access, Ira, when he speaks earnestly, like it's easy to kind of pick up on it. Like you kind of know when he really does mean what he's saying, and it's not just kind of like, let me filibuster through this question and get out of here. But when he said on that early signing period that, like, we really like the 3 wide receivers that we got, we think all 3 of them are going to be ready to contribute. I mean, like that was pretty strong praise from coming from your head coach, who's a former wide receiver, and you had all these bodies already on the roster there. So when he said that, I'm like, all right, well, we all know about Hakeem, obviously. Goldie Lawrence won't be here until the summer. I'm like, all right, well then I'll take Van Dravis Jacobs as my, quote unquote dark horse. And he's looked really good so far. Looked really, really good.
Well, you and Daniel can both take victory laps, because that kid is really good. And I, like I said, I think I mentioned it. I'm not sure if I mentioned it last week on our Smash that got abbreviated by the Tom's cable or power getting shut off or not. Yeah. But I asked Kes McCorvey one day at practice, and I said, we can all tell he's good, but what is it about him? And he kind of started going into some of the details about his footwork and some of the things he does. And I think Fentrell Cypress talked about him as well, and just said, man, he's got really good releases. He runs crisp routes, and he's got very good body control. I mean, I think receiver is one of those positions where you don't necessarily have to have a ton of experience. Man, if you can play, you can play. And there's, I don't know, is there anything else we need to see? I don't think there's anything else we need to see, Aslan. He's going to be a big part of this passing game.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like a lot of the receivers they have, but he's just kind of gone ahead and been like, all right, man, I'm going to figure out a way to get on the field, deal with it. So I'm cool with it. Carol reminded me I need to get a touch of Sam Spiegelman and try to get him on the podcast, and then maybe do a little breakout video. It is April, which is 1 month closer to May, and maybe Destin Hill will be here in May. How have you handled that, Ira? I mean, I know you kind of, you're very diplomatic. You've got a very seasoned eye when these things sort of happen. To me, it's bizarre. I mean, just the fact that, like, I assume he hasn't played any kind of organized high-level football in forever, and now this team is completely different than where they were when he committed. Like, do you need to take a guy that's got 2 years of maybe ring rust on him? But if he has like true burner speed, maybe that's the one kind of thing you don't have on you. Not that you're slow or anything, but like maybe it's just worth it to take a flyer on a guy like that. But it just seems like the numbers it'd be kind of a little bit of an interesting, dubious move, but Mike Norvell's got equity. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, no, we've all been kind of just not really paying too close of attention to this because of, over the last 2 years, it's not just that he didn't make it, but we were told he might make it in that fall. Then we were told he might make it in the fall of 2021. Then he might make it in by January. Then, no, maybe by next summer or the next year. And so at that point, you're like, okay, if this kid ever shows up, great. And that's kind of still where I'm at a little bit. But Michael actually, as you mentioned, Sam Spiegelman from On3 reported about a month ago that he was going to be here in May. Michael we just posted something on the premium recruiting board the other day from the weekend where Michael talked to somebody else at FSU who said that they're expecting him here on May 13th. They actually gave him the date. They think he'll be here by May 13th. And I looked up the calendar, and the summer classes begin on May 15th. So that would put him, in position to attend summer classes. And, I don't know. I mean, like you said, the program's in a different place. When he signed, he was the number one signee of that class. I mean, that was, those were dark days. I mean, not to put him down, but, you weren't bringing in a ton of 4-star blue chip kind of players. And he was one of them. And David Johnson, Florida State's recruiting coordinator, running backs coach, is from New Orleans. And that was kind of how the ties that he had there to Edna Carr. And they, that high school's, put out a lot of great players. And so that seemed to be a big coup. So from that standpoint, even if he's not a guy that could contribute in 2023, I still think he's a good take because he did have a lot of talent and because that is a school you'd love to have connections with. I think they had players here this past weekend. They put out a lot of really good college football players. So, if he's a guy from that school and has success here and they've stood by him for 2 years during this situation, and now he arrives and they stand by him and he plays well, then I think it's only good for Florida State. And then maybe, I wouldn't expect it to be a huge contributor this year, but maybe, because of how good they are at receiver, but some of those guys are going to be gone after this year.
I was trying to pull up the list from that year. On3 had him as the number 2 prospect from that signing class. It's crazy that they got Coop there. Coop was the year. Yeah, they got Peyton. Peyton just ahead of him, and Malik McLean was part of that signing class.
I think that might have been our former company, our former alliance may have had Destin Hill as the top one, but yeah, I mean he's a really nice player, and I don't think they desperately need wide receiver help, but certainly could probably use him next year.
Thomas, yeah, I do drink, but I can't drink in moderation, so I would just start getting hammered on the show. So I choose not to drink at all. Eric Watterson, how fast is the offense lining up and getting into the next play? Will they be able to keep defenses on their heels at will, Ira?
This is not, Ole Miss or whoever, some of these teams that are, breakneck speed. Have you seen anything majorly different from what they've done the last couple of years? I mean, what you saw on Saturdays last fall is pretty much what they still do. They can go faster when they need to, but that's not the staple of what they do.
I mean, they drill a lot of tempo again in the early part of practice. I mean, one of the first 11-on-11 exercise they do is just pure tempo. I mean, no matter even the passes dropped, it's like the student manager spots the ball, you got to run to it. So they do that. But when we see them in 11-on-11 situations team during practice, I haven't noticed anything where it's like, whoa, like slow down.
It's kind of like it's a tool they have. I think to me, when you look at like the really, really up tempo teams, that's what they do. And that's their advantage. Like they're not doing anything majorly scheme wise. They're not doing anything majorly personnel wise. It's pretty much, we're going to go faster than you. We're going to expect you to make a mistake and we're going to exploit it. Oklahoma, probably in the bowl game. We've seen it from some other schools. I don't think that's ever going to be the goal here under Mike Norvell. I think it's more of a kind of a mixture of, some of the good of that when they need it, but not relying on that.
We don't have to name names, Ira, but Broward County Seminole, how many kids transfer after spring? If I gave you 4.5, would you take the over, the under? Is that a good number? Oh, it's a good number, huh?
Pretty good number. I haven't sat down and thought about it, but yeah, like my first thought would be 4, but 5 wouldn't shock me. And I don't know, I guess Derek McClendon would fit into that. So maybe he'd be the 5th, but yeah, I think somewhere in that ballpark. I think that gets them close to where they need to be. Now, they may come out of the spring and decide they need one or two more guys than they thought they needed based on how the spring went. And then if that's the case, then they may need to, maybe like at least not fight to keep some guys who are thinking about transferring. But yeah, I would say in that ballpark. And it's funny, the positions, Jeff and Tom have gone through some of that, and I'm sure you and Corey have as well, like what positions have crowded rooms. I think offensive line is the only one I feel strongly about that they're going to probably, a couple guys are going to want to leave that room, I think. But I don't know that there's a lot of other positions where it's just, there's no room here. I don't think running back is one of those positions. They're probably going to have 5 in the fall, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't see, because the 4 guys on scholarship, Trey Benson's not going anywhere. Lawrence Toafili's not going anywhere. Rodney Hill's not going anywhere, and Keziah Holmes isn't going anywhere. So I don't like, even, CJ Campbell could decide he wants to go somewhere where he can get more carries, but he's not on scholarship. So that doesn't change anything. And I don't think that's the case. I think CJ Campbell loves Florida State, loves his teammates. And I think I don't see him leaving. So that's not a position. To me, offensive line's the only sure thing. I think that you're going to lose a couple probably. And then, maybe it's just one here or there elsewise.
Yeah, I've been surprised that like Lawrence Toafili's so bought into everything. I figured a guy like his kind of pedigree. I mean, he had Ohio State after him coming out of high school. I figured like he would have wanted to been somewhere where he could like spread his wings, but they have a role kind of carved out for him, and he seems to really embrace that. So that's always an awesome thing to see. Part of the culture, if you will, everybody.
Yeah, and I saw Jay Jackson said CJ's a great dude. I mean, that is one thing, like universally, no matter who you talk to, people love CJ Campbell. I mean, we've talked to him and we know he's a good guy, nice guy, like easy to talk to. And his story is great. How he ended up coming to Florida State as a walk-on, kind of like similar to Trayshawn Ward's story. You want to root for those guys, but like everybody loves CJ Campbell. I mean, if there's a class president on this team, I think it would be CJ Campbell. And as far as Toafili, yeah, I just think, man, I think if I'm him and I look at what Florida State, what Mike Norvell's done with guys that have been in his offense and how they've done in the NFL, whether or not they were running backs, quote unquote, running backs or not. I mean, all those guys at Memphis that are now in the NFL, he's got some of their characteristics. I mean, I think he may feel like, hey man, this isn't I'm not getting a ton of wear and tear. I've gotten better. I'm going to get opportunities, and Toafili's a guy that's going to test out of the world with his speed. So I just think maybe it's and he's another one that really seems to just like it here, right? I mean, he's such a positive guy.
Yeah. That's wild, man. I mean, he is getting, got a little, maybe from 20 to 21, he didn't get more reps and they played more games in 21, but I don't know, I guess 162 over 13 games, you're getting a little bit over 10 snaps a game, and you feel good about it. But that's a good point. Guys like Tony Pollard, Kenneth Gainwell, these are the guys that, were running backs. Darrell Henderson, these are the running backs that Mike Norvell had at Memphis. Now, Henderson was a bit of a workhorse, I feel like, but, Gainwell and Tony Pollard were, kind of picked their spots, and look at them now. They're huge parts of NFC East offenses. So that could definitely be shout out to Lawrence Toafili. He was also like a Polynesian All-Star last year, something like that. So Pinellas Park, 727, represent. Ira's hanging out with us for like 40 minutes so far, everybody. I want you to hit the thumbs up. It's totally been free. So is hitting the thumbs up. We would appreciate it. Just pings out the video there. Lets people know we're hanging out, talking Noles. So the more, the merrier.
We're not getting a lot of baseball questions, Aslan. You notice that?
Thomas asked this earlier when we talk about numbers. I would be very surprised if they didn't go into the portal and try to get somebody at defensive end, because he asked, who's the number 4 defensive end? I think in this exercise, you're assuming Gilbert Edmonds, your number 3 defensive end, behind Pat Payton and Jared Verse being the number 1 guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right now I'd say probably Byron Turner. Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, we could all, sort of dismissed Eric McClendon leaving because, it's not like, I think there's a perception, there's a feeling that he valued himself as much higher than the team did. And that's possible, but it doesn't mean he wasn't valuable. And he's a guy that has, started 12 games last year, has played a lot of football, can hold the point of attack, is not a huge sack tackle for loss guy. But if he was going to be second team or a first teamer that splits reps, he could do that on a really good defense. And now he's gone. So you're not going to just replace that. Like he look at all the snaps he played last year.
I know, and every year he's gotten better.
Yeah. So
this is my theory though, Ira. I think to maybe be like a little bit of a homer here, and I love Derek, man. Derek actually is one of the few guys I think actually recognized me for coming out and interviewing him when he was in high school with Michael Langston. So I got
you did. Yeah, that's right. You guys did a good piece on him.
Yeah, so I got maybe like a little soft spot for him, but the hope was that he was going to take another step, right? Like he was going to build, and as you've seen, like this kind of steady growth that he's had here at Florida State. Like, all right, maybe he wasn't amazing last year, but man, if he gets a little bit better, then you have an above average defensive end on your roster, which is great. You go in the portal and you can replace who he's been, I think, in the transfer portal. But I think this coaching staff probably had hopes for him to get better, and that would have been a really good piece of the puzzle. So in some regards, I think he's replaceable. Like in terms of what you've got in the past, you can probably find someone that's played Power 5 football here in the portal coming up that you can figure out kind of a similar role. But if he would have been in this system for year 4, you're a lot better off with a guy like Derek than you would be a guy that's transferring out of Northwestern, for example.
Yeah, probably. If they can get somebody better than him, great. But at the end of the day, it's not like they ran him off. I mean, he chose to leave, and that's fine. It was his prerogative. He graduated, so he can go and start somewhere new. But I think there will be a drop off if you don't go get somebody else. I like Byron Turner a lot. Mike Norvell was really high on him. I think JP's been really high on him lately. He's had some good practices. But one of the things they mentioned, I can't remember if it was JP or Norvell mentioned, maybe you remember, that he's been on campus for over 2 years now, but most of that time he was coming back from injuries. Like his whole first year, who said it? Papuchis?
Papuchis, yes, Papuchis.
Yeah, Byron Turner, when he came in as a freshman, and he's a talented kid, they liked him a lot, but he had shoulder surgery as soon as he got here. Like he didn't really take part in much of anything that first fall he was here. Then he gets through the rehab, then he comes back, and then last season he showed some potential early, and he made some plays on special teams, and then he got hurt again, and then came back late in the year and played some. But it's just like he's a guy you look at and say, okay, dude, he's been here 3 years now. This is his third year, but it really hasn't been like 3 good years because he's been rehabbing for a lot of that. So I think that's the concern there. He's a talented player, man. I like him. I think he's got potential, but I don't know that you feel great about him being on the field for 40 or 50 snaps, right now. So that's a question mark. I mean, I think they may have to go look there. I thought one thing that was kind of encouraging was, that again, Norvell brought up Jaden Jones, the defensive end, junior college defensive end, who blew out his knee at the beginning of last season. I think it's like last August or September in junior college. He's not able to do a whole lot now, but I actually just noticed him the other day at practice, like physically.
Yes, he's got the frame. He's got the frame, the physical tools. He's got him.
He looks like, just in his uniform, we haven't seen him do anything yet, but he kind of looks like Kendo or Jermaine. He's just, was he 6'5", 6'6"? I mean, he is an impressive dude physically. And they said he's really putting a lot of work in the weight room. Just, we haven't seen him running yet. And Norvell said he could be an X factor. So yeah, man, if he's, you've correctly pointed out many times that the first year after an ACL isn't always great. So maybe he's not a huge impact this year, but maybe he gives you something.
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah, because he's an impressively built young man. And if we can't get him this year, you definitely feel good about what they'll be able to get out of him moving forward. I'm trying to pull him up here on the Rooster.
While you do that, I want to bring up there was a comment in the chat that I thought applied similarly to Jane Jones. Is somebody asked about Kyle Morlock and how he's developed. I was just talking to somebody the other.
Off, though, nacho cheese or Cool Ranch Doritos, Ira?
The purple bag is the best. Oh! The purple bag is the best. I don't know and then nacho cheese, and then Cool Ranch is always kind of my last. But then I'm always like, you know what? These are pretty good, but I don't like. They're not my first. I'm not going to grab them first. You're more of a Cool Ranch guy.
For the people listening to this on the podcast, the question is coming from a guy named Cool Ranch. Or Corey and I have had slobber knocker, drag down fights over this. But I'm a nacho cheese guy. I love Cool Ranch. But like nacho cheese is the original, man. Like they put them on the map. So I recognize and respect that.
Yeah, given the choice between those two, I'm going nacho cheese. But the purple, man, I don't know. There's some crack or something on those purple ones. I mean, they are good. But the question was, how has Kyle Morlock been not only in receiving but blocking as well? And yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was actually remarking to somebody at practice that, man, he is just really, he's so well put together for a guy that's 6'6". And this person in the program said he is, the thing about, like, Morlock is one of those guys that has just really benefited from being in a Division I Power 5 like nutrition system and weight room. He was at Shorter College or Shorter University in Georgia. No offense to Shorter, but do they even have meal plans? Like, I don't even know what are they fending for themselves at Division II schools. I don't. Anyway, I just think he has. I mean, he being here for 3 or 4 months, I think has done wonders for him physically. He's really filled out. And we know he can be a good pass catcher. So, yeah, man, I think he and Jaheim Bell is way more physical than I expected. Man, I did not expect him to be a guy that would put his nose in there physically, just because I don't know how much he ever did that before. But he seems to have embraced that too. So those guys, man, they're pretty well-rounded.
South Georgia, man, 229. He's got that dog in him. Jamie endorsed it. So, yeah, I don't want to say like finesse, but I thought, he's kind of like a pass, a catch first tight end. Yeah. But it's been cool to see him mix it up and get, a little bit dirty down there. That would be Jaheim. Related to tight ends, it's fair. Tom Kirkpatrick wonders, do we think they could lose maybe a couple of tight ends? I mean, we talk about crowded rooms. I'm sure Jeff and Tom have talked, and we know Jeff's been the oracle when it comes to tight end room and getting that thing back up to speed and where you need to be. But, man, it was crazy to hear. I think, somebody asked Coach Norvell, I think Matt Murchell from the Orlando Sentinels asked him about tight ends. How Jaheim looked good, Kyle looked good, and then it's like, yeah, Marqueson looked really good, and Jarrell Powers, man. Oh, wait till Jarrell Powers, and he's really coming along. It's like, man, and you're like, well, they still got Brian Courtney as well, and then Jackson West is still on the team. And it's like, that is a lot of tight ends. It's a lot.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know how many of these guys.
Shout out Preston Daniel. Can't forget about Preston Daniel. Sorry.
But obviously Marqueson, there's a chance they may lose a few of them after this year. So maybe you keep them. But yeah, the difference there is, I think on the offensive line, you'd probably say there's a couple of guys that you look at and you say, okay, well, there's probably not going to be much of a window for them to play at Florida State anymore. Like there's probably a couple of guys that if Florida State's offensive line was where it was 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, there's a path for them to get on the field. But where they're at now, I don't know if a couple of those guys ever get on the field. Tight end's a little different, man. I like those guys. I like Jarrell Powers. I like Jackson West when he's available. He hasn't always been available. I really like, Brian Courtney. I mean, I think those guys are they're different. They're not all Marqueson Douglases or Jaheim Bells or Kyle Morlocks, but they all bring something to the table. Yeah, that's a good point though. If you're going to pick a position, that's probably one where you wouldn't be surprised to see you lose at least one.
Yeah. A lot of people on the purple bag game. Ira,
it is
Trey
sweet.
Lukens, Vontae's in that red purple team. Daniel Gibbs, purple team, spicy,
dude,
sweet chili. Ira ain't lying.
I'm telling you, man. It's bad news. Like we won't bring it in the house, because if it comes in the house, Aslan, it ain't lasting.
Get smashed. Speaking of the smash, how about our guy James B?
Dollar bills, y'all.
I know it's not wake up, but that deserved a little bit. $100 from James B. James, thanks so much, man.
Thanks,
James B, huge Florida State fan. Booster, gives back to the program too, so don't worry about him spending the way he spends his money. A good evening, fellas. Smashing it up. How much 12 personnel have we seen at practice this spring? 12 personnel being, I think, one back, 2 tight ends. So they've, we can't talk too much formationally. They're out there though. They're doing the thing,
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with the multiple, Aslan. I'm gonna go with Jimbo saying that they're multiple. That's the thing. I mean, to me, that's really the funnest thing, I think, to looking into this fall. Like I'm thinking like our guy Matthew or Evan, the intern, or we may have to have somebody at games next fall charting formations, because I don't even know could there be too many options? I'm seriously, can you ever have too many options? Who are you putting on the field, Aslan? If you're picking your 5 players besides the quarterback and the offensive line, how do you pick 5?
I mean, to think about being like having first and goal at the 4-yard line, and you just go Johnny out wide, Kyle Morlock out wide, Jaheim and Marquiston in line, and then it's like, all right,
you got Trey Benson, you got Rodney Hill, you got Keziah Holmes, it's
bring Ja'Kai like in some jet motion too. Like you don't know what to do. Good luck.
I mean, I'm sure these are problems that Kirby and Nick Saban and these other coaches, they've been Ohio State. Like there's plenty of schools that have had these problems. We just haven't seen them. And even like the 13 team, I don't know. There wasn't like there was pretty much a set group of guys, right? I mean, it was like you could pretty much pick I think we would probably almost everybody would agree on your like top 12 or 13 players on offense. I don't know, man. There's a lot of dudes that you'd like to see on the field.
Not counting tight ends, like who do you think is the second best wide receiver if we live in a world where Johnny's the number one guy? Because I mean, I do wonder, we see Kentron coming along. We're hearing good things about Kentron. Let's say Kentron's the other guy out wide, and then, Ja'Kai or, let's say Winston Wright gets right, and he's a slot guy. We love Vandrevius. Micah hopefully comes back. But, like, is Kentron the number 2 receiver? Like, is that a good enough 2 receiver on a playoff team? Or it's like the calculus changes because, to your point, like they have so many different dudes that like it's like as long as you got that kind of guy that you can count on, like a Johnny that can anchor things for you, you can just be multiple and throw whoever else you want out there and have certain sub packages and be successful.
Yeah, it's a great question. Jeff asked me today if I thought Kentron would be the number 2, and I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. Not to put him down. And I think he's had a good spring, and we've seen him get better and better and better, but I haven't seen him consistently doing games yet. And I feel like I need to see that because he's been here for 3 years. We've seen him playing in games now for 3 years. So it's not like he just showed up. So, and I know he can't, it's probably not fair because in high school, he only played 1 year of high school football. He was a basketball player. So his upside was always going to be a project that got better and better. But I wouldn't predict him to be the number 2. But I don't know if there'll be a clear-cut number 2. I mean, I just think you've got go back to those options. I mean, Winston Wright has come a long way since last fall. Like at the end of last fall, he still didn't seem like you could see him really playing in a game. They talked about maybe getting him in a game. It just never really materialized. But he's a lot better now than he was then. And now you're talking about 4 months from now where he might be. He might be in that mix. We don't know when Micah Pittman's going to get back. Darian Williamson is a guy who could be that guy if he's more consistent and always available. That's been a problem since he's the last couple of years. And then love Vandrevius and some of these other Ja'Kai Douglas. So I don't know. I just think I think it's going to be Johnny in the 4 tops. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be a strong number 2. Unless it's Vandrevius. But yeah, to your question, I would not say, Kentron should be your clear number 2, and then everybody else is going to fight for scraps. I just don't see
that. Back to Cool Ranch. The past 2 seasons, Warchant has been very high on our defensive secondary preseason. Are your reservations this year because the offense has been so efficient, or are you cautiously optimistic and opportunistic in the way they're playing? I mean, I think for me, Ira, it's like a lazy answer here, but it's just, when you've followed this team, you've been a fan of this program, and you realize just how talented they've been at cornerback, whether it's, I want to go back to, we don't have to go through the 90s and stuff, but let's, stay kind of recent when you talk about Darby and PJ Williams and, Derwin at safety and Jalen Ramsey and Asante Samuel. Like, I don't know if Renardo Green's a first-round NFL cornerback. Like, I don't know if they have that. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe they got Jared Verse coming off one side, Pat Payne coming off the other, and the push they'll get up the middle, that'll affect quarterbacks enough. I think for me, it's that, and seeing some of the challenges and the head-to-heads that we've seen in one-on-ones, which maybe isn't fair, but like a guy like Ja'Kai is giving them the business constantly. Like Johnny gives everybody the business, so he's a tough one to kind of grade. I think for me, it's just so tough to play defense. It's so tough to play cornerback in this day and age, and I don't know if they have anybody that's got like that elite day 1 grade in the NFL draft, which like to me is, as a guy who doesn't know maybe the techniques and the skill set that you really need with your eyes watching it, man, like they don't have that. So that's what makes me a little bit, cautious in my praise, if you will. But I haven't really seen them be amazing, but I think they're good enough to be a little bit better on defense and, get a couple more wins.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic that Cool Wrench brings up because I have a friend of mine in one of my group texts kind of kills me. He'll bring this up every once in a while. It's just like that little jab. When anything comes up, it's like, yeah, man, it's like you guys talking about the secondary in 2021. Because I did think we thought it was going to be good because it was dominant in practice. I think what we didn't realize probably at the time was receiving core was not what it needed to be. I mean, we knew it wasn't a great receiving core, but I mean, I don't know if you, from what I remember, I mean, they couldn't complete passes, in practice, like even one-on-ones even, which the offense usually has an advantage. The DBs just kind of dominated that. And, I thought that, what's my guy's name that transferred to NC State? Brownlee.
Cyrus Fagan?
No,
Jarvis Brownlee.
Jarvis Brownlee. I mean, Brownlee, like in practice, they could not complete passes on him. He was a little handsy, a little physical. That's not always called in practice. Plus, the receivers just weren't any good. So we were grading on a curve of they look pretty dominant, but we realized once the season started, no, the receivers are not any good, and they're not that great either on the secondary. Last year, I thought they were a lot better, and I think they're going to continue to get better. But I think it's a solid secondary. Yeah, to compare it to, like you said, I mean, some of the great secondaries, it's probably not that. And I can't remember I know that his premise was that we were high in the secondary the last 2 years. What was the end of his question? Do you remember?
I guess, just so what is.
Okay. Well, so what is it?
Why we've been pumping the brakes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's at this point, you'd like to see more big plays from the secondary in teams and team stuff. Just want to see them take another step. I mean, they're solid. It's not like they're bad. And they're going up against a great offense with a great quarterback. I think we can say it's a great offense with a great quarterback. So you'd like to see them be greater. But certainly not alarmed by it.
Too soon, Justin Polk. Too soon, man. Too soon, man. Walk that back, man. Not nice. Not nice. I do like what I'm hearing them talk about Jarian, and I think Jarian's had a pretty good camp too. I mean, he's a guy that I had like blind Mississippi optimism on like 2020. I'm like, yeah, man, he's a guy that Oklahoma wanted. He was Mississippi State. Like, they got good defense. Like, he's going to come and he's going to show out. He did against North Carolina, but that was about it out of him in 2021. So,
yeah, but if you go back and remember, and he's a perfect example of like a guy that comes in and you think you're going to get one thing. And I think he's another example of a guy another reason we thought that secondary was going to be better in 2021 because he came in, but he had the hand injury in preseason. And so he missed like all of camp. And then when he did play, he wasn't in good condition because I don't know, the hand injury apparently kept him out of conditioning. Literally I think there was some limitations to what they would let him do. I don't know if he had a pin put in. I don't know exactly what they did to his hand, but he really wasn't even running. He wasn't in shape. And then he got thrown out there like when the season started because he was better than anything else they had, but he wasn't ready. And I think he lost some of his confidence. But yeah, man, he started the last 10 games last year and played pretty well. I mean, his PFF grades are good. And I think, they said he's been better this spring. Yeah. Is he a guy, again, I don't know that he's a long-time NFL cornerback, but he's definitely a solid college cornerback.
Well, let's see. Here's where we're winding things down here on the Monday Smash. We appreciate you folks hanging out with us. If you hit that thumbs up, that would be.
Hey, what do you? I was thinking about Azarie. Do you feel like Azarie is where you were hoping he would be, or not? No. Not making a ton of plays, right?
No, he hasn't. But I mean, he seems to have the physical part down. I don't know how much of it is playing with the right technique and knowing where he's got to be. Maybe. I mean, he's still a young guy, but. He was a guy that I had a lot of hope for to see like that big step made. Haven't seen it yet. It's second half of spring. It can change, but it might be a little bit, hoping to see a little bit more of Azarie, at least for me here in this early part of spring.
Gene asks, do we feel a little better about the kicking yet? Hate to lose a game this year. We could have won with a kick. So updating on the kickers, John Papucha said that last week he was really high in there last week. Both Ryan Fitzgerald and Tyler Keltner, I think he said, other than the one block, which sounded like he was more on protection than on the kickers, that he said they didn't miss any kicks during live competition last week. They did miss some kicks in the scrimmage from what we've heard. So they didn't cap off the week really good. You'd like to see them make those in the scrimmage itself. But so, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know that we're feeling a whole lot better about kicker than we do coming into the spring. Do you? I mean, I think it's still a question mark. I mean, it would have been great if either Ryan just completely dusted the challenger or Tyler Keltner, who transferred in, just completely blew the doors off. But I don't think that's happened that we've seen to this point.
I think, Corey said it pretty well, I think, on the podcast about, if you're looking for like a silver lining to this, and I totally agree with what you're saying, you would hope that one of these guys would have pulled away from the other. Not because the other guy was slumping, but you just hope the other guy was being that much more automatic. It feels like they had no other choice last year than Ryan Fitzgerald, right? And it was either Ryan Fitzgerald or go for it. Don't kick extra points against Wake Forest and stuff like that. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, folks, like against Wake Forest, like they were mounting a comeback. They couldn't rely on their kicker to kick an extra point. They were going for 2 points in that situation. I do feel whoever wins this competition, like if they miss a kick or two against LSU, you don't feel good about having to go to a backup, but like that's something they actually have now in their back pocket, right? Like last year it was walk-ons, and I know he's a preferred walk-on, but that's a little bit higher up on the food chain, if you will. So whoever wins it, it will be the best man, obviously, because they track everything. And if they slump, then you feel like, well, they can at least bring somebody else in who might be capable. So that's something they didn't have last year. They do have this year. Makes it feel a little bit better. So, all right. Good stuff. Don Rourke said, great show, Iron Aslan. Thank you guys so much. Hope everyone in the chat has a great week. Go Noles. Don's such a ray of positivity. I think he's the guy that's always like, him and Mike Myrick are always like, Mike got us. Hashtag Mike got us. They're always spreading good news and cheers. So we appreciate y'all hanging out. Tomorrow's practice, we'll be out there with updates starting like around 4:30, 5 o'clock, or whatever. We'll have footage, interviews, observations. We'll knock out a podcast afterwards. Seminole headlines tomorrow, 1 to 3 o'clock. Corey's in town, everybody. So hopefully everybody will be hanging out at the studios together. Jeff Cameron, Ira Schoffel, and Corey Clark. Michael Langston's working on a lot of recruiting stuff behind the scenes. What else is going on over at warchant.com here in the next day or so, Ira?
Yeah, and our guy Matt as well. Matt actually had a really nice story today. He had a little exclusive. He talked to KJ Bolden, who's the number 1 safety in the country, 5-star defensive back, who's being recruited by Georgia and everybody else. KJ actually got here today for a visit for 2 days, and it's a big time. It's a big deal, man. This kid's one of the. I mean, like I said, number 1 safety in the country, number 1 player in the state of Georgia. Matt spoke to him yesterday. We had a preview to his visit, and he showed up today. So Michael will be out there. There's they've actually got several recruits coming tomorrow for practice. There's going to be a lot of recruits, I think, Tuesday and Thursday. And because with it being Easter weekend, it sounds like a lot of the recruits are going to be here during the week. And yeah, man, so we'll have plenty of recruiting coverage coming in as well. Like I said, Corey's got that column coming on the safeties. And yeah, we'll have plenty more coverage here going into tomorrow. I think it's baseball at home tomorrow night against Jacksonville, or is that Wednesday?
Yes. They are. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah.
So there's our baseball talk. Thanks, Tom Lang, for keeping it down in the chat. Tom Lang in the chat doing
all in line.
Doing the people's. But thanks for everybody for watching. And thanks, Aslan, man. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. We'll be doing this the rest of the way out here for spring football. For Ira and Aslan, thanks for watching the Monday Smash. Hit that thumbs up on the way out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as warchant.com. Have a great night, everybody. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us.